So we're going to start with an invocation from Rabbi Lydia Medwin. Would you join me here?
This weekend, as we honor the memory and the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we receive upon ourselves again the mantle that he handed to us in life and in his death, the responsibility to continue to advocate for equality and freedom for all people. And there is no group that represents this work better than the labor unions of North America. What a year it has been for unions. We can give a round of applause for that. Between the strikes in Hollywood, the incredible results of the work of the auto workers unions, the ongoing increase in support from the public, especially our young people, that unions have generated, it is clear that labor unions are on an upswing, bringing to bear the power of people when they move as one. More wages are increased for more people, safer working conditions are guaranteed, and instead of the cogs in a machine, more people are respected for the humans that they are and valued for the essential and high-quality work that they provide. This notion of valuing humans simply for their humanity is key to what unions are about, and it's key to what Dr. King so beautifully articulated for our world. This notion is absolutely vital right now because we live in a world that constantly tries to make us two-dimensional, tries to paint us in too few colors, reports dangerous clickbait, single narrative stories instead of news with depth and nuance, and assumes they know all of us without even trying to understand any of us. In short, there are plenty of ways to dehumanize people these days. There are tens of thousands of new jobs already created and coming soon to the state of Georgia as we make our mark as the 5th in the country for electric energy and solar power. But for some people, tens of thousands of jobs means mostly lots of tax revenue. But for unions, for us, this boon means tens of thousands of humans, each with a name and a story and a family and a dream that they will bring to the Peach State. These folks will need strong unions to support them, to ensure that there are proper checks and balances to those whose accountability does not always end or even begin with the worker. We'll need a state that warmly welcomes strong unions, who will ensure higher wages, safer working conditions, and give voices to those who individually might not make much noise, but who collectively have proven to be a formidable sparring partner. And so I invite you to join me in prayer. God, you who created the first humans, you who made humans last in the order of creation so that they could never claim to be better even than the mosquito who came before them. You, God, who made Adam and Eve not Jewish or Christian or Muslim, not white or black or brown, so that no one could say my ancestors were made first, so I am superior to my brother or sister. May you, God of mercy and justice, smile on this group of your children gathered here today. May you lend your strength for the battles ahead. May you lend them patience for opponents who will surely challenge their patience. May you lend them the humility of Moses and the wisdom of King Solomon. And may you help them know that when Dr. King stood with the sanitation unions in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, and chanted with them, "I am a man," what he meant was, we are all human, coming into this world with nothing and leaving with nothing, equal in our deserving of human dignity, each a holy fractal of the divine presence. May we all use this weekend to recommit ourselves to building a world of justice and fairness, to bring near the day of a world completely redeemed. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you. Everybody looks well. Our next presenter of the word is our Imam, El-Amin. Would you come to the podium, please? Thank you, sir.
We thank our rabbi for her inspiring words and beautiful prayer. And I see coming behind me is my classmate from Booker T. Washington High over 50-something years ago, Greg Fannin. He will come and bless the food. So let me offer words of prayer. Let us pray. Oh God, merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer, we seek refuge and guidance and help with you from fear, hate, and hypocrisy. We seek refuge with you from the curse of war and the human sins that plague our humanity, that Dr. King pointed out to be militarism, extreme materialism, and racism. We seek refuge with you, O God, who has created us, empowered us, blessed us, often in spite of ourselves. We ask you to lead us from self-righteousness that will not compromise, from narcissism pretending to be patriotism, and lead us to the justice that is not just for us. Help us to remember and appreciate, to sincerely embrace the legacy of leadership of our drum major for justice, our drum major for peace, our drum major for righteousness. Help this Atlanta North Georgia Labor Union stay in the band and stay on time and in step, beating your drums, beating your voices, your work on behalf of the unsheltered, the unskilled, the unemployed, and on behalf of the weak, the sick, the ignored, and the oppressed. Oh God, bless this labor union to continue to work on two fronts, or as Dr. King said, with both hands. May you continue to lift every voice, straighten every back, focus every mind, open every heart, and engage everybody and everybody as we march behind our drum major for justice, righteousness, and peace. Then our living, then our work, then our life will not be in vain. We ask, oh God, the God of all of us, to hear our words, to guide us, to preserve us, to strengthen us, and give us victory over wrong in the world and the wrong that we harbor in our own souls. Oh God, lay not on us a burden greater than we have the strength to bear. Now bless us to care more than others think is wise. Bless us to risk more than others think is safe. Bless us to expect more than others think is possible. And bless us to pray more than others think is practical. To you, O God, belongs the sovereignty. To you belong the praise. And you and only you have power over all things. Amen. 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 Thank you.
All right, folks. I'm not going to delay this anymore because I know everybody wants something to eat, so we're going to bless the food, and then we're going to start directing you to the imbibement. Reverend Van? That's all right. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm getting ready to introduce Reverend Greg Fan, the preacher man. Now, is there anybody in here that does not know Reverend Fan? All right, well, you will know him after this.
Thank you. Good morning. And Happy New Year. Look at his neighbor, and neighbor say, neighbor, he won't pray long. I thank God for my dear friend, Pleeman out of Maine. We went to school together at Watton High. He knows me, and I have a few of my friends here from Watton High. But let's bless this food. Dear God, we thank you, Lord, for this day. We thank you for this opportunity. And we ask, oh God, that you would bless this food, bless the one prepared it, and we that partake of it. In your name we pray, amen.
We're going to play a special message from our representative, Nikema Williams.
Good morning. I'm Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and y'all, I proudly represent Georgia's 5th Congressional District and the Atlanta North Georgia Labor Council. I'm also a proud card-carrying member of both UFCW and the Congressional Labor Caucus. So you know that I will always stand with labor and organized workers and the members of the Atlanta North Georgia Labor Council. Thank you so much to President Sandra Williams for inviting me to join you today. Y'all, I so wish that I could celebrate your 2024 MLK Day breakfast in person, but I have work to do in Washington, uplifting working families and making sure that everyone has dignity at the workplace. The theme of today's breakfast: power, purpose, opportunity. It is a timely reminder of the importance of organized labor. Y'all, just this week, Republicans in the House tried to take aim at organized labor. Why? Because they're afraid of your power. Republicans hope to bring 2 Congressional Review Act bills to the floor of the House that would impact working families. The CRAs would ship jobs overseas and weaken the right for people to bargain at the workplace for better wages, better workplaces, and better benefits. I will always stand up for working families and fight to protect people's power in the workplace. Y'all, these are the very same values that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. held dear. Reflecting on Dr. King's life gives us time to reflect on the purpose of unions and organized labor. Dr. King did so much for our country as a champion for racial and economic justice. Dr. King correctly said the Black Americans and labor needs, y'all, they are identical. We're still striving to meet Dr. King's goals, but we'll get there with the Atlanta North Georgia Labor Council and all of its leadership. Y'all are building on Dr. King's legacy, fighting for good wages, fair working conditions, and quality, affordable housing. Thank you for recognizing the purpose of unions. Labor and the Atlanta North Georgia Labor Council have tremendous opportunity at their feet. People are organizing in record numbers and in industries that historically haven't been organized. And while we see more support for labor than ever before, we have to make sure that the Department of Labor can adequately protect workers. That's why I'm proud to co-sponsor the Workers' Power Act, so that the Department of Labor has the resources to stand up for organized labor. I also know that we have to make sure that labor continues to provide opportunity for the workers of tomorrow. I'm a strong supporter of Youth Build and the Georgia Building Trades Academy, and I'm leading a request for $193 million for the Youth Build program and co-sponsoring the Youth Build for the Future Act, because y'all, Youth Build works and it builds the next generation of labor workers. Once again, thank you so much to President Sandra Williams for today's invitation. I'm confident that the Atlanta North Georgia Labor Council MLK Day breakfast will inspire everyone to keep up the good fight for working people. I'm proud to count each of you as a co-conspirator for justice as we ensure that everyone can share in the promise of America, no matter your bank account, no matter your zip code, and no matter where you work.
We have a very important guest that I would like to bring up and say a few words with him. You may remember back in 2018, labor unions, community, and our faith community all came together to support a couple guys that actually are my heroes. One of them is with us right now. He does and is a huge advocate for labor. He doesn't need much of an introduction because we all know him very well, and that is Senator John Ossoff.
Good morning. Can you all hear me all the way in the back? Can you all hear me all the way in the back? Okay, good morning. It is such a pleasure to be with you this morning as we approach and enter the MLK weekend. I'd like to begin by asking you to join all of me in giving a huge round of applause for the fearless leader, Sandra Williams, President of the North Georgia Labor Council. Several fellow elected officials will be arriving and joining and addressing you, including Mayor Dickens, Senator Warnock. We're also joined this morning by a living legend. A living legend. Please join me in expressing our appreciation for a lifetime of heroic service to human rights, renowned across the nation and around the world by Ambassador Andrew Young. Right here. I also express my gratitude to all of the faith leaders and labor leaders who are with us this morning. Thank you for your tireless efforts to lift up the state of Georgia, to ground us in righteous values, and to advocate for those who build this nation and make the things upon which we rely. This weekend is particularly important for those who are elected to serve, as it's an opportunity for us to reground ourselves in the purpose of service. And I can tell you, having now served you to the best of my ability in the Senate for the last 3 years, that I've seen firsthand what you already know, which is that in the halls of power in Washington, it is far too easy for far too many to forget the purpose of service. And so this weekend is an opportunity for us to reground ourselves in that purpose. Our purpose is to lift up those who build and make things, those who labor and work each day, those who have built this nation, as we undertake historic efforts to rebuild America's infrastructure. We serve those who will benefit from that infrastructure and those who are building it. As we reinvigorate American industry and manufacturing, we serve those who will use the things we make and those who make them. The purpose of service is to provide a voice for those who lack power, for those who lack the money to purchase power, for those who rely upon the good faith and the strong values of those elected to service to remember what service is all about. So this weekend is an opportunity for all elected officials and all public servants to reground ourselves in those values. I want to express my gratitude again to all who lead across this state on behalf of working people. Please join me in giving a round of applause to all the local presidents and members, to everybody who works and organizes across the state of Georgia. And I hope that across the state, Georgians will be inspired by the example that's being set this morning, and see this weekend not just as an opportunity for rest, but as an opportunity for service. I know so many of us who join together for this breakfast will find opportunities in the next 3 days to give back in particular ways. And I look forward to seeing all of you across the state, not just for the next 3 days, but for years to come, as we work together to lift up working people in Georgia and across the country. It is a pleasure and an honor to serve as your senator, and whenever and however I can be of service to you, please never hesitate to reach out to me directly or to my able staff. My Chief of Staff, Ray Benitez, is here. Ray, please raise your hand. And my team across the state is here to help you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you this morning. Thank you for all that you do, and God bless.
Can you guys give the senator another round of applause? You know, we know in a time where there are very busy schedules and a lot going on in Washington, D.C., that he thought enough of us to be here. But I have yet another surprise for you guys. But I'm not sure if he's ready to come in. You know, I talked about the work that labor unions did to make sure that we got not only the very best, but we got national recognition for having 2 senators, our first African American and our first Jewish senator. And so I don't need to tell you a lot about our next guest. What I do want to tell you is that I'm ecstatic that with his schedule, he was actually able to come and join us, because initially we thought that he would not be in town and available to us. So I'm looking at Meredith Lilly. Is the senator about to come through the door? Okay, everybody here knows how impatient I am, so that's no new news to anybody. And especially my cohort, where's Edgar Fields? He can attest to that. So thank you. Join me in welcoming Senator Raphael Warnock.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Give yourselves a round of applause. Come on, you can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I always count it an honor to be among the people that I seek to serve. Grateful for everybody in the building. I understand that the CEO of DeKalb County, Mike Thurman, is here. There you are, brother CEO. Give him a great big round of applause. My personal hero and a hero to all of us, Ambassador Andrew Young. Give him a great big round of applause. I've been a student of Dr. King my entire life. His words and his witness captured my imagination. And I've been reading Ambassador Young, yet the latest biography of Dr. King. And I'm just inspired again and again, not only by Dr. King's witness, but by those around him and the hard work that they do and continue to do. Ambassador Young embodies the words of our ancestors who said, I keep so busy working for my Jesus. They ain't got time to die. This man keeps moving. He's got his shoes on, doing the work. Give Ambassador Young another great big round of applause. We love him and appreciate him so very much. He's seen the arc of history, and he maintains that hope, and it inspires all of us. I'm so proud to be with all of you. This is MLK weekend. Dr. King was brilliant at building a coalition of people committed to justice. Rabbi Abraham Heschel said that when he marched alongside Dr. King, he felt like his legs were praying. And I've got a feeling that when Georgia sent its first African-American senator and its first Jewish senator to the United States Senate in one fell swoop, that Martin Luther King Jr. and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel were somewhere giving each other the high five. Let's hear from my brother, Senator John Ossoff. Shout out to Council President Sandra Williams. Give her a great big round of applause. Executive Director Eric Richardson.
So just like the North Georgia Labor Council, Dr. King understood the importance of improving the lives of working people. He understood that economic security and prosperity and social justice go hand in hand. Dr. King said that all labor has dignity.
All right.
He believed in the dignity of work. And you can't say you believe in the dignity of work and not uphold the dignity of workers. I get rather annoyed with folks, Brother City Council President Doug Shipman, give him a great big round of applause. I get annoyed, Brother President, about folk who wax eloquently about how important it is for people to work and have a work ethic, but won't do what is necessary to make sure that work pays.
That's right.
If workers, as we started to call them during the pandemic, are essential workers, then we ought to pay them an essential wage, make sure they have essential benefits. Dr. King understood that. From the Memphis sanitation strike to Montgomery bus boycott and the Poor People's Campaign, his advocacy for workers' rights was deeply rooted in his commitment to equal justice and equity. Dr. King, in his last great movement, was focused on building the Poor People's Campaign. He was going to take poor people to Washington, D.C. and shut the place down until Washington could see the struggles of ordinary people. But even as he was doing that and folks were trying to get him to stay focused on that, he was summoned to Memphis. Summoned to Memphis by those who were focused on the dignity of work. We should always remember the names Robert Walker and Echo Cole, two black sanitation workers whose bodies were literally crushed in the machinery of their trucks. Why? Because they were forced to ride outside of their truck in the midst of a rainstorm 3 years after the passage of the Voting Rights Act and 4 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, which integrated public accommodations. They were still forced to live in segregated settings. I think that's important to underscore because we tell ourselves a simple story about the movement. We say that a long time ago there was segregation. Dr. King had a dream, everybody got it, and we've lived happily ever after.
Not so.
But there these black workers in 1968 couldn't get inside the truck. Their bodies were literally crushed. And this is why the labor movement is so important, because poor people, working people, are still often crushed by the machinery of power. So Dr. King was summoned to Memphis by the blood of workers. So it's wonderful to be here with you. You understand, as he did, that the power of broad coalition of people coming together is how we make long-lasting change. And so I'm here to remind you in these dark days that Dr. King was right, that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends. It bends toward justice. We saw that in 2023 when organized labor racked up wins for working people all over the country. And I've got a feeling, in spite of the words of the pundits and all of the hand wringing, we're going to see it again in 2024. Because when we fight, we win. When we fight, democracy wins. And organized labor represents democracy in the workplace. It means fighting against efforts to pass tax cuts for the richest of the rich on the backs of the working poor. And it means fighting to ensure workers can band together for better wages and working conditions on the job, and fighting back against partisan efforts to make it harder for them to organize. And I won't sugarcoat it. Change comes in fits and starts. Sometimes we take a step forward, sometimes we take 1 or 2 steps back. But we know that progress is possible because we saw what the UAW and auto workers across the country did last year. We know progress is possible because we got the bipartisan infrastructure law done, which created over 600,000 construction jobs nationwide and invested over $9 billion in Georgia, and there is more coming. We know that progress is possible because we passed the Inflation Reduction Act that will support more than 1 million jobs in energy and related manufacturing sectors over the coming decade. And so as we remember Dr. King, let us remember Dr. King's words. He said that anybody can be great because everybody can serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. So thank you, organized labor. Thank you, North Georgia Labor Council. Keep doing the work. Keep standing up for justice. Keep standing on the side of truth. Keep building our economy, because workers are what keep this country going. My dad was not a part of a labor union, but he believed in working hard. You didn't get to sleep late in his house. He told me, you all know by now, he told me every morning, get up, get dressed, put shoes on, get ready. So tell all the folk who are hand-wringing about 2024, who are saying, are we going to show up, are we going to get it done? How short is our memory? They were asking that same question in 2020, and in 2021, and 2022. We're going to stand up and get this done one more time. God bless all of you. Keep the faith. Keep looking up.
Is everybody having a good time so far? Please give Senator Raphael Warnock another round of applause. You know, so not so long ago, we had a new mayor. And one of the promises that that new mayor made to us is that he was going to stay close to labor. Does everybody remember that? And that he was going to create a labor department. Does everybody remember that? So he gave us a tickler when he took one of our own, Humita Embry, and she was one of our first labor liaisons. But he said, oh, there's more to come. And we said, okay, what? So the more to come is John Flanagan. John Flanagan is our new Commissioner of Labor and Employment Services for the City of Atlanta. He works very closely with businesses, government, and the community to find employment solutions for the business community as well as the labor community. So we look forward, we'll be working with John very closely during his tenure. I'm going to ask John to join me up here. John also hails from Tampa, but is originally from Pittsburgh. And we have a Pittsburgh Steeler right over here. And Bobby Howard from Pittsburgh, didn't play with the Steelers, played at Tampa. So prior to his appointment, John served as president and CEO of Career Source Tampa Bay and has 15 years of leadership experience in workforce and economic development. I present to you John Flanagan.
Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Before I start anything, go Steelers. We're going to take it home this week. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here at the North Georgia Labor Council's annual Dr. Martin Luther King prayer breakfast. Thank you to all esteemed guests, colleagues, and most importantly, all of the hard-working members of the North Georgia Labor Council here to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. I want to give a special thanks to Ms. Sandra Williams for the opportunity to speak today and introduce our wonderful mayor. As Ms. Williams stated, my name is John Flanagan, and I have the distinct honor to serve Mayor Dickens and the people of Atlanta as the Commissioner of Labor and Employment Services for the city. As Commissioner, it is my job to ensure that all Atlantans have equitable access and services and training that will continue to move Atlanta forward on the strength of our world-class labor force. It is my solemn vow that I will go to work every day to ensure the mayor's vision of significant investment into our city's labor and innovation work, and to ensure Atlanta's workforce is skilled, resilient, and prepared for the future. I've often heard this mayor say Atlanta is a group project, and it's better when we work together. Couldn't agree more with that. And I promise you today again that we will work hard to partner with everyone in this room and expand those opportunities through apprenticeship, on-the-job training, and education to further the knowledge, skills, and abilities for everyone that will continue to strengthen and expand our world-class labor force. For that, you have my undivided effort and attention. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your time and attention this morning. And without further ado, please welcome Mayor Andre Dickens to the stage.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is so good to be here with y'all this morning. What I love about y'all is y'all know how to have a meeting, because at a meeting you got to have some grits and some bacon. Every time I come, every single year, you feed us, and that's important. Some meat on the table. Thank you, John, for that introduction, and thank you for joining our team here at the City of Atlanta. There are so many people here that lead our city and our region, and I'm going to just shout out a few, and I hope I don't get in trouble, but it's always good to be in the company of Ambassador Andrew Young, Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff. Thank you all, CEO Thurman, these great dynamic leaders. Our City Council President, Doug Shipman, I just saw him, and I know he just moved. Oh, there he is. There you go. Doug Shipman and Sheriff Labatt. I saw him over in the corner a little while ago, and a lot of state reps and state senators and city council people. I see some South Fulton council people. And then, as he mentioned, Hamida Embry from our labor office. Thank you, and Tracy and everybody for y'all's leadership. She get the applause. That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Eric and Sandra. Your leadership, your friendship, your support, and Deborah Scott and Rita and all of y'all. And I got my pastor here, Reverend Smith, who also helps us in the city of Atlanta. And so many of you, and I'm so thankful. Each and every year that I come here, this is my third time as mayor, and then I've been previously a city council person speaking to all of you and these great labor leaders, these union leaders that are in this room. As you know, I'm a child of labor. My mom was CWA for 28 years, and yeah. And I was UFCW for a couple of years, and so the local 1996, as a matter of fact. So thank you all for having me, and I'm delighted to join you today and with my friends and allies at this annual event as we observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day on what would have been his 95th birthday. It is important that we also recall how often Dr. King celebrated the decency of work. Just 2 short weeks before he was assassinated, Dr. King told laborers that work that serves humanity has dignity and worth. That is partly why we are working so hard to make sure that Atlanta is a city of opportunity for all, and while we are working so hard to make sure our city lives up to its true promise, and where our residents can not just survive, but that they can thrive. Dr. King was a champion for economic justice and a champion for workers' rights. And part of how we honor his great legacy is by continuing to advocate for workers and their rights to livable wages and safe working environments. Last time I was here, as Sandra just mentioned, I spoke about our intention to create the first Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services, and I'm happy to report that we now have our city's first ever labor commissioner, John Flanagan, who you just heard from. John, thank you for joining us. He got everything right, except for he said something about some Steelers, and I mean, you know, we love the Steelers when the Falcons are not playing, and for recently, the Falcons haven't been playing in the playoffs for quite a while, so we got to get back to that. So some changes got to be made, don't you know? Since becoming mayor, we have made significant investments in local workforce development and training. As I have said before, it is imperative that we really invest heavily in our city's labor and innovation work too. And I wanted a skilled workforce that's really prepared for the future, and John and Ms. Embry and others in that department will really lead those efforts. Every January, it's time for us to rededicate ourselves to the principles of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., these principles that he stood on. It would be wise for all of us to be mindful of that today and going forward as we head into one of the nation's most crucial election years. And our senator talked about that. Senator Warnock talked about that. This is a crucial election year for us in this nation. And so let us always remember that Dr. King also told us that our weapon is our vote. And we're going to get out there and get everybody out to vote once again. Let's have a great day, everybody. God bless you, and happy King Day.
Thank you all again very much. And again, another round of applause for our mayor, Andre Dickens. So we're going to take our program a little bit out of order because our DeKalb CEO, Michael Thurman, has a meeting that he has to get to, and it is out of state. So I want to rush ahead. We have a very, very special co-MC today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Some of you may recognize her. Her name is Margot Bingham. She's a singer and songwriter and an actress. She too was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay, we also have, she's been at a couple franchises. As you recall, we had a huge strike in the film industry that impacted not only our IBEW members, but our SAG-AFTRA folks. She is a member of SAG-AFTRA and a union member, which is why we're delighted for her to be here. But some of the roles that you may have seen her in are The Walking Dead. How many of you have seen the new series on the first black sheriff in the United States, Bass Reeves? Okay. So then you will recognize her. She's also been in the Amsterdam and Boardwalk Empire. And I want to just tell you this. When we contacted, Deborah Lippman and I contacted a mutual friend of ours in New York who does a lot of work in the film industry. She was more than happy to say, I have someone that might be interested. Well, when I tell you, when I called this young lady and asked her, would she help us with this morning's breakfast, I am very, very proud to say, you know what her first question was? Did you want me to come and serve? So you know how I feel about servant leaders. We have got to recognize them. So with that, I'm going to ask Margot Bingham to come to the stage. I have more to tell you about her in a few minutes. Her dad is here. Where is Craig Bingham here? He's back there in the back, also a former Pittsburgh Steelers. So he's with this NFLPA group. Margot, please join me.
Hi, everyone. I feel very honored to be in this room full of so many incredible people. Before I introduce the next speaker and our next guest, I'd like to wish everybody, first of all, a Happy New Year. And every year I start out my year with a word to kind of kick it off. And this year, personally, I'd like to take on the year with the word responsibility. When the union of SAG-AFTRA took to strike, we could not have done it without the help and the common bond of all of our unions. For the greater good of so many people, for so many people, in solidarity, fighting for what we are worth, standing for each other together. What a year we've come from, and what a year we have in front of us. My father was and is the first Jamaican to ever play in the NFL, and he joined his union. Thank you. And I come from a multi-dimensional family, and I truly am excited to take on the responsibility of this year. So with that, I would like to introduce our next guest, Rita Scott. Scott is a president of the Carriage Point Homeowners Association in Stone Mountain and a member of the 4th Congressional District Women and the Pine Ridge Elementary PTA in Stone Mountain. The MARTA board addresses areas of importance concerning ridership, safety, economics, new tech, government regulations, and other issues. Since '04, Scott has worked with the Communication Workers of America as a political director, lobbying on behalf of workers and workers' rights. Please welcome Ms. Rita Scott.
Good morning, Labor. Fired up. Ready to go. Fired up. Ready to go. I am so excited to be here this morning. I am going to have to condense my introduction of the CEO of DeKalb County, Michael Thurman. Greetings to his fabulous wife here. So excited for him to be here with us today, and he has a flight, so we had to kind of condense this program. There are so many things that I would love to say about Michael Thurman that I'm going to have to hold to a later time. Remember that, Mrs. Thurman. First of all, there are a couple of things that I think are so important to labor, and I want to make sure, no matter what, to mention those things to you. First of all, Michael Thurman is the first African-American elected statewide in the state of Georgia. Let's give him a hand. Without a prior appointment. So he made history in being elected as the first African-American in the state. There are many things I could tell you about Michael Thurman, but I want to tell you what's important to labor. First of all, I remember as the labor commissioner, when our sisters and brothers at Ford and GM were told those plants would close, Michael Thurman put a computer lab at the location so those that had not had the opportunity to have computer knowledge would be able to be trained and become very upbound when it comes to computers. I also want to remind you that Michael Thurman implemented a GED program for DeKalb employees who had been working there 20 to 30 years but never had the opportunity to finish their high school education. I think this is very important. And then there is, I condensed this, Mr. CEO, to these 4 things. Then there is the graveyard. Those of you may have seen in DeKalb County where a deacon of a church talked about many years that a road had been paved over the graveyard of those church members, and nobody believed that that graveyard existed underneath the paved street. But when Michael Thurman became CEO, he hired an archaeologist who actually did the work to find out, and it was determined that indeed that street was paved over the gravesite of many that had died that was a member of that church. I am saying these things because this is so important to those of us who work every day in labor, those of us who labor for the human need. And lastly, but not least, I want to tell you about Michael Thurman and his conversation with me, and then Michael Thurman, you can come on up. A couple months ago, Michael Thurman called me, and those of you women in labor, you better be glad this happened, because if not, you were going to be in DeKalb County in Stone Mountain out on the street on a Saturday morning, because he called me as I sit on the MARTA Board of Directors representing DeKalb County, and he said, every time I pass this street, there's a woman standing there waiting on the bus with her child, and she stood out in the rain with her child in a stroller, and there was no shelter. You tell MARTA that I want a shelter on that site. And I went to MARTA, and MARTA thought it, well, anyway, MARTA didn't accept it right then. And I said to MARTA, the conversation I had with Michael Thurman, and he used some very colorful words, if you don't have a bus shelter at this corner in Stone Mountain by the end of August, I will have 100 women from labor and from those elected officials, and we will make sure that the news media, Georgia Stand Up, and everybody else know that the CEO asked for a shelter here so that a woman waiting on the bus with her child would not stand out in the rain and the cold and the heat. I give to you this evening, this morning, Michael Thurman.
Good morning, labor. But Rita didn't tell you the most important thing I've done. I thank God that I had the opportunity to appoint the first labor official to serve on the MARTA board which is Rita Scott. I did it. The first labor official to ever serve as chair of the Martyr Board was Rita Scott. Give her a hand. I want to thank Ms. Sandra Williams. Thank you, Ms. Sandra, for inviting me. Now, you all the luckiest breakfast audience of all the King Day programs all over the country, all around the world.
Thank you.
You got a politician with a short speech. And I know y'all busy and I know you got things to do, but the main reason I'm not going to be that long this year is that my name ain't on the ballot this year. Now, y'all invite me back in a couple years, I'm going to be up here for a while. But first of all, to the Atlanta, North Georgia Labor Council, I thank you all for inviting me here, but you know, I've reached a point in my life when you get to be Social Security age. Come on now, I ain't the only one. All my Social Security folk, raise your hand if you're out there. Ain't God good? And all you young folk that ain't Social Security age, y'all butts need to keep on working so I can afford my check. Ain't that right? But when you get Social Security age, Mayor Dickens, you too young. When you get Social Security age, Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff, y'all too young, you begin to look back and wonder. You begin to look back and wonder how I got over. You begin to look back and wonder how a little black boy born on a dead-end dirt road in a house with no indoor running water. How a little black boy born on a dead-end dirt road with cotton fields all around, with an outhouse out back. A little black boy born with a dad that couldn't read or write can stand up now at this podium. The North Georgia Labor Council at this podium can stand here as the CEO of DeKalb County. You begin to wonder, a daddy who was a sharecropper, a granddaddy who was an illiterate sharecropper, and a great-great-granddaddy who was an illiterate sharecropper. How does he get to be a CEO? Well, I'm come to tell you something. Ambassador Andrew Young, I come to tell you something. That if you look at me and don't see a Georgia sharecropper, you better look a little closer. Because you see, I got the heart and the soul of a Georgia sharecropper. Because you see, sharecroppers can take a little bit and make a whole lot out of it. So I come this morning, not as a CEO, but as a Georgia sharecropper. It's just that I'm a Georgia sharecropper with a law degree, and that makes me a bad Negro. I'm just telling you. I'm a bad man. I come here with Andrew Young. You know, it's something when you sitting watching TV, black and white TV, all those years sitting out in the middle of nowhere, and you see Andrew Young on the TV, and you admiring him and watching him and emulating him. And somehow, some way, you end up sitting at a table with him. You're sitting up with him knowing your name. But more than anything else, you come knowing that the struggle that he fought is a struggle not finished. And so on this cold, crisp January morning, we of differing racial, ethnic, religious, and political persuasions have gathered on common ground. On this cold, crisp January morning, we, the black and the white, the red, the brown, the Protestant and the Catholic, the Jew and the Gentile, the Muslim, the Christian and the Jew. On this cold January morning, we have come on common ground, under a common roof, for a common purpose. On this day, the PhDs and the no-Ds have gathered. On this day, the saints and probably even a few sinners have come today, Ms. Helen Butler, to celebrate the life and the legacy of Martin Luther King. And it is fitting and it is proper that we pause to celebrate Dr. King's life and his sacrifices to the principles of freedom, equality, and justice for all. His life and his contributions and the brave men, Andrew Young and Abernathy and Lewis, who walked with him, and the faceless, nameless heroes and heroines who stood in the gap for us, calls us to this point to honor their legacy. But we got to do more than celebrate. We have to rededicate ourselves to finishing the unfinished work before us. And so as I begin to close, I want to say something to you. Do not grow weary in your good doings. Don't get upset that the conservatives got a majority on the Supreme Court. There was a time when all 9 justices voted that slavery was legal, but we didn't give up. Don't get upset that they say Trump might go back to the White House. Even if he goes to the White House, God is forever on his throne. Let us continue. And I come to tell you that I, like Senator Warnock and Mayor Dickens said before you, I ain't paying the polls no attention. That's just a psychological trick to try to convince you that we can't win or we won't win. But I tell you one thing, if we don't vote, I guarantee you we won't win. It's important who's in the White House, but parents, it's more important is who's running your house. I've come here this morning to tell you that we as a people must embrace the Keynesian belief of love for family, of love for each other. And I got to pause. We've recognized a lot of dignitaries here today, but I want to recognize a lady of courage, determination, who speaks truth to power, who did not give out, who did not give in, and because of her, justice has reigned in Georgia. Ms. Wanda Cooper-Jones, please stand. Arbery's mother. Stand up, give her a round of applause. Anybody want to be tired? Anybody want to give up? Anybody want to say it's nothing we can do? You look at this lady right here. Finally this. King Day ought to be a day of atonement, forgiveness, and restoration. To atone, Pastor Warnock knows this, is that we got to recognize our own misgivings and shortcomings. I heard Dr. Bernice King said we got to start loving one another. And see, in the past, it meant loving your enemies. But in today, it means we got to start loving ourselves. We got to understand that unity does not require unanimity. We can be unified and not be unanimous. Y'all been in a meeting and somebody said, you know, all us need to get together. Well, hell, all us ain't gonna never just get together. You don't need 100% of nothing. You can get elected senator of the United States of America with 50% what? +1. You can be elected mayor of Atlanta, Georgia with what? 50% +1. You can be elected president with less than 50%. Is that right, Senator? Because it's the electoral college. Hillary got more votes than Trump. It's a difference between being unified as opposed to being unanimous. And see, when you're out of power at the state level, we have to recognize that the only time we really need to be unified and unanimous is when we are opposing those who oppose us. Y'all looking at me? See, we go into meetings and we argue about who's left and who's right and who's in the middle. It ain't about who's left and who's right and who's in the middle. It's who's against all of us, whether we left or right or in the middle. Forgiveness is we get mad with each other in the local labor council meetings, at the CEO's office. We get angry, we get upset because somebody ain't 100% where we want them to be. Andre can't always be 100% for me, and I'm his boy. I'm his boy, right? The senator can't always vote 100% for me. I'm his boy. But we have unity even if we're not what? Unanimous. You know that's how they're beating us right now. Mr. Amon, that's how they're beating us. They are forcing us to be 100% on everything. Restoration is about forgiving transgressions, misstatements, may have been committed by your friends and your colleagues. And then there's this idea of restoration. And that's not restoration like at the antique shop where it's made new. When you actually restore it through God's word, you made what? Better than new. We're better than new. Finally this. Someone mentioned it. And by the way, I come from DeKalb County. I'm the CEO, and the minimum wage is $17 an hour. I was with my sanitation workers. And by the way, the budget that'll be approved in 30 days will have a minimum wage of $17.60 an hour. Doug Shipman, is one thing to talk about it, it's something else to what? Go do it. I remind my daughter, and Zola's here, and I remind everyone, when Dr. King went to Memphis in April of 1968, he wasn't going to a black tie ball. When he went up to Memphis, he wasn't going to receive an award. Wasn't going on a shopping spree. Wasn't going to be honored. But matter of fact, and Dr. Warnock knows this, he went against the recommendations of all those around him because there were death threats out. So here is the greatest leader of the 20th century going to Memphis, not to be honored, not to be celebrated, not to go to a black tie ball, but he was going to Memphis to help sanitation workers. The greatest leader of the 20th century went up to Memphis, went to his death for sanitation workers. For workers, most of us wouldn't give them a cold glass of water on a hot day. This man that you celebrating this morning gave his life for sanitation workers. And Christmas when it was cold, and yesterday on Tuesday when it was wet, and they showed up anyway to pick up your garbage. And you wouldn't even say thank you. When he got to Memphis, God empowered him to ascend on a prophetic mountaintop. And you all know when he got up on that mountaintop, he looked out and really looked over across the decades and across the eons. He looked into futures and lives not yet born and said that God had empowered him to go up on this mountaintop. He looked out, he had seen the promised land, and he reminded us and promised us that, you know, I ain't gonna get there. I won't be at the North Georgia Labor Council breakfast. Andrew Young said, Andy may be there, but I won't be there. But he said, as a people. And by the way, he didn't just say as black people. He didn't just say as Hispanic people. He didn't just say as Native American. He said what? As a people, you all will be sitting there at the North Georgia Labor Council in January 2024. And you know the next day when Andy and all, a shot was fired, a bullet went hurling through the air. It entered his skull, imploded his brain, and the Prince of Peace fell in a pool of his own blood. But y'all know, I know, Dr. King's life paralleled the life of another great leader who led his people out through the wilderness, who led his people up on a mountaintop called Mount Nebo. You know, I know that Dr. King's life paralleled another life of a great leader who looked over into another promised land, who saw it but also died on the mountaintop and never set foot. You know, like I know, that Dr. King and Moses saw the promised land, but they never set foot in it. But I come to hear my friends this morning to let you know that there's a book of Deuteronomy and Exodus and the book of Joshua, and it said that after Moses died, a young Hebrew named Joshua came forth. So what I'm submitting to you is that if we're going to come down off this mountaintop into this promised land, that you and I must be the Joshuas and Joshuettes here in Georgia. You must lead our people out of hatred and fear and drugs and gangs into our prophesied promised land of freedom and justice for all. I want you to go pick up what you have and go marching in the promised land. But before you go, I want you to understand that before the Hebrews went into Canaan, somebody said, don't go, because there's giants down there in that promised land. They don't go, because there's some Canaanites down there in that promised land. They said, don't go, it's some Republicanites down there in that promised land. Don't go, don't go. But what I come here to tell you as I walk away from this stage, you walk into the promised land. For it has been taught that if you will have faith and if you will believe in a true and righteous God, you can walk through the valley in the shadows of death and fear no evil.
So many years ago, I was born in the city of St. Louis, and I came out of a Teamster household. That means a lot, because I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but most of you know anyway. But I'm very proud to say that I've always been tied to union and to labor. And I know what it can do for our community, what it does for our households. So I'm going to very quickly, because I know he has an appointed time to be somewhere, but I want to introduce you to someone that many of you know, and that is Matt Higdon. Matt, can you join me up here on stage? Matt is actually the president of Local 728, Teamsters Local 728. But something you will never hear Matt Higdon say out loud to you all is that in this country, or the United States, he is the #2 in the UPS packaging division, where he holds office and is responsible for the UPS grievance panel. He's a vice president for Joint Council 75. We have a man here that is always willing to open his doors and to be a part of whatever we do. So without further ado, Matt Higdon.
Good morning. It's good to see everybody. I know everybody's bellies are full and probably getting a little sleepy, but how could you be after Mr. Thurman? Where's Mr. Thurman at? Is he still here? Yeah. God bless you, brother. I appreciate that. I feel like I need to just say a quick prayer and pass the offering plate and sit down. How about you guys? But I'll be very brief. I know we've got other speakers to come up, and thank you all for being here. I just want to say good morning. Thank you, Sandra, and the rest of the folks here for allowing me to be here and to take part in this wonderful event, this wonderful prayer breakfast in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. I've had the privilege of being here several times before over the years, but it's always just an honor and humbles me to be here and to hear all these great men and women speak. So I thank you for that, and a special thank you to Sandra and the Atlanta Labor Council for all that you do. I want to take this time and a little bit of a personal privilege. I know Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff had to step out. I understand that. But I want to personally thank all of the elected officials in here. I want to personally thank all the labor leaders in here that stand with us. Local 728, which best local in the country, right? And all my Teamster brothers and sisters, on behalf of Local 728 and union members all across this country, thank you, Senator Warnock. Thank you, Senator Ossoff, for being heroes and champions to us in the American Rescue Plan, the Butch-Lewis Act, and single-handedly, those two Georgia senators single-handedly saved the pensions of thousands and thousands of union workers across the country. I think Mayor Dickens might have stepped out already as well. He just left. But I want to personally thank Mayor Dickens and many of you. Sandra, where's Kenny at? Where's Kenny at? Kenny Mullins, where's he at? He just stepped out. The president of Local 613 here at the IBEW. I want to say thank you for all your help in 2023. We took on the biggest logistics giant in the world, a $100 billion a year profitable company called UPS. Some of you know who they are, right? I've been fighting with and affiliated with this company for over 35 years now as a union member, as a worker there at one time, and now as the president and principal officer of Teamsters Local 728. And I want to tell you, not only were we successful negotiating the strongest private sector bargaining agreement in history of UPS, we were successful in aiding and assisting SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Guild, UAW, and on and on and on. Car haul, solid waste, and on and on and on. It has been and was a year of labor for 2023, and we have no intentions, brothers and sisters, of slowing down whatsoever as we go into 24. Let me speed along. As we all know, workers' rights are human rights, and human rights are civil rights. And with that being said, let me quickly tell you about another event that took place in 2023 within our Local 728 Teamsters. I've had many wonderful things in my life, and I give God all the glory for every blessing I've ever had. All good and perfect gifts come from above. We know that, but God uses organizations like the Atlanta Labor Council, like Teamsters Union, to be conduits to filter a lot of those blessings through. And one of the highlights of my career was I received a call last year. I received a call that Dr. Martin Luther King was going to be nominated and put into the Teamsters Union as an honorary member. And what was so special about that was that he was going to be, and he is, an honorary member of Teamsters Union Local 728 in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had the privilege of signing his union card. If you ever want to see it, it's hanging in my office on my wall. Come by and see it sometime. But as we all know, that workers' rights, human rights, and civil rights are far from being made right and far from being made equal. Though we've made some positive movement in the right direction, we have much, much, much more to do. And so in closing, I want to ask that you would allow me just to give a few words of encouragement to you. Dr. King said, if you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, never, never stop moving forward. We cannot stop moving forward in the fight for justice, equality, human and civil rights. As long as we have life, we must, just as Dr. King said, move forward. So I challenge all of you this morning, keep doing that, keep moving forward. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I love you, Sandra, and appreciate all that you do. God bless you and have a great day.
So next, and this will be very brief, but we call this our House of Labor. We're sitting in one of the largest locals of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 613. Kevin Swanson, president of Local 613, I've asked him to just come say hello, something. Come on, Kevin.
Hello, everybody. Our business manager, Brother Kenny Mullins, had to leave, so just on behalf of IBEW Local 613, to all the delegates, dignitaries, politicians, representatives that were able to come out and break bread and be with us here at this prayer breakfast, I'd like to welcome y'all to what is this year and has been for the last 55 years, the House of Labor here in Atlanta, Georgia, IBEW Local 613. And real quick, our organization doesn't have a CEO, but I believe I'm going to open our bylaws to see if we can put one in there after that speech, I tell you. Thank y'all. Welcome to 613.
I'd like to introduce the president of Atlanta City Council, Doug Shipman.
It's the best introduction I've had in a while, short and sweet. Good morning. I'm very honored to be here just for a few moments to bring greetings on behalf of the City Council, the City of Atlanta. You know, it dawned on me listening to Senator Ossoff, Senator Warnock, Representative Williams, Mayor Dickens. There has never been a time that there are more open doors in leadership across the city and the region to labor than there is right now. There has never been a time where more people will pick up the phone from the leaders of these institutions in the history of Atlanta than right now. And it's because of the people in this room. I've had the privilege of sitting next to Helen Butler, my old friend, this morning. And you should know she's already been wearing me out about a bunch of issues that she wants to see change.
Right.
But it reminds me that the partnerships between labor and local government have never been stronger, and that's because of everybody in this room. So please give yourselves another round of applause for that. Some of you know that I spent 10 years helping build the Center for Civil and Human Rights. And I was reflecting recently because the movie Rustin has been playing in theaters. That means that a whole new generation is learning about the history and the story of Bayard Rustin. And there are a few things I just want to make sure we remember on this King Day breakfast about Bayard and about the March on Washington. The first thing that if you watch that movie, if you didn't know, that you'll know, is the idea of the March on Washington happened in the 1940s from who? A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph wanted to march on Washington to demand rights of workers for FDR in the 40s. He finally got the march done in the 60s. He was, of course, a labor leader. Bayard Rustin was the one who organized the March on Washington. He was a labor organizer by training. The march doesn't happen without the organization of Bayard Rustin. If you watch that movie, you'll see this very famous meeting that happens. And they say, how are we going to feed everybody? Where's everybody going to go to the restroom when they come? How are we going to get trains and planes and buses to get to Washington? How are we going to get over 100,000 people? Because we need a bunch of people to show up or this is a failure. And who did they turn to? Walter Reuther. Walter Reuther, they said, only labor can get this done. It has to succeed. Dr. King would not have been heard that day had it not been for the sound system funded by labor. There would not have been the famous signs that everybody carried around that day if not for the funding of There would not have been any place to go to the bathroom at the March on Washington. Literally, the latrines were provided by labor. We remember the I Have a Dream speech, and we should quote it. But that entire day does not happen without labor. And I want to quote from Walter Reuther's speech that day, because he was one of the 10 speakers. And it is worth remembering his words as well. He said, "I am here today because the struggle for civil rights and the struggle for equal opportunity is not the struggle of black Americans, but the struggle of every American to join in. If we can have full employment for the negative end of war, then why can't we have the job for every American in the pursuit of peace?" You can clap for Walter Reuther for that. So let this be the beginning so that we can win the freedom and justice and equality for every American, from Boston to Birmingham, from New York to New Orleans, and from Michigan to Mississippi. Walter Reuther knew what Dr. King knew, which is you can't be free until you can buy the hamburger at the counter that you're trying to desegregate. That you can't be free until you have the economic rights to participate in our economy and the voting rights to participate in our democracy. They go hand in hand. And I will humbly close, because he's sitting right in front of me, with a story that Andrew Young once told me. He and Dr. King went to see President Johnson, as Andy Young and Dr. King would do. And they said, "We need this bill in 1965 around civil rights and voting rights." And President Johnson said, "I'm out of political gas. I don't have the power. I can't get it done. I don't have the votes in Congress. I'm sorry, guys. I've gone as far as I can go." They walked out of the Oval Office, and Andy Young turned to Dr. King and said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And Dr. King said, "Well, we're going to give the president some power." Because Dr. King realized that as powerful as the president was, power flows from the people into the Oval Office, not the other way around. The three great scourges that Dr. King talked about are still with us. Michael Thurman touched on them so eloquently. Poverty, war, and racism. We've got them all in abundance. So here's my ask as I close today. And I realize what I'm asking. I'm asking each and every person in this room to agitate and organize and give more power to Senator Raphael Warnock, and to give more power to John Ossoff, and to give more power to Mayor Dickens, and to give more power to the Council of the City of Atlanta. We need you in order to unlock the power that allows progress to happen. We can't do it by ourselves. We won't always agree. But Dr. King and Andy Young were just right. The president needs power. And as we've seen from the March on Washington, labor has a unique ability to bring that power to bear. Thank you for what you do, and thank you even more for what you will do today and going forward. Thank you so much.
Andrew Young does not need any introduction, but I'm going to give one anyways. A politician, diplomat, activist, he began his career as a pastor. Young was an early leader in the civil rights movement, serving as an executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and a close confidant to Martin Luther King Jr. Young later became active in politics, serving as a U.S. congressman from Georgia, U.S. ambassador to the UN in the Carter administration, and the 55th mayor of Atlanta, as well as one of the first 2 African Americans elected to Congress from the former Confederacy since Reconstruction, alongside Barbara Jordan of Texas. Since leaving office, Young has founded and served in many organizations working on issues of public policy and political lobbying. Please, with a round of applause, give it up for Andrew Young.
Thank you very much. Forgive me for sitting down, but I wish I could say it was from praying too much. but I was kind of crazy, and I ran down 16 flights of stairs because the elevator broke, and I didn't want to be late, and it messed up my knee. So it's hard for me to climb steps, but it's not hard for me to be with you, because I've always been here. When I first came back to Atlanta after Dr. King's death, there was a Teamster by the name of Tony Zivelich. And he was trying to get me to run for Congress. And a lot of people were, and I said, but the district is, you know, it's almost 30% white. I don't know whether I can get that many white votes. And he said, you don't know. And I said, well, I don't know whether I'm crazy enough to try. And he called me and he said, I need you to come with me. He said, there's some workers out here that are talking about going on strike. And he said, I'm a Teamster, but I've been a Teamster for 32 years and I never had a strike. He said, strikes are not about money only. Strikes are mostly about respect and being able to listen to each other and work together. And he said, that's also true of black and white. He said, problems that we face are not black or white. Everybody's got problems. And we're going to solve them best if we solve them together. And he convinced me to go with him to this union meeting. Now, I was down below where the Lakewood Amphitheater is. I forget the name of the hall. But when I walked in there, I was the only one there with any color. And if you excuse me, what I really said to myself was, oh, shit. I mean, this was 1970 now. And I had been in Birmingham, I had been in Selma, I had been in Charleston, and I hadn't had any particular welcomes from folk that looked like the folk I was looking at. And I said, what do I say? He said, just say whatever else what you'd say to anybody. And I must have started preaching a little bit. The next thing I know, all these white folks were saying amen. And I realized that what Martin said was right, that God did make of one blood all the nations of the world. And as soon as we realize that we're all brothers and sisters, the sooner we're going to get together and make progress for everybody everywhere. And that's what organized labor has stood for. And Doug Shipman did a very good job of explaining that. And we've had some really brilliant addresses this morning. So I don't need to do much. I do want to remind you of a day that all of these things that I had been doing in the civil rights movement began to bear fruit. That it was 1972, and I had run for Congress and lost. And then this time, I said, I don't have much money, but I don't need money because I know how to reach the people. And we went door to door. We had street dances from the back of flatbed trucks. And I mean, we turned the city into a party town for about 6 weeks. And then I was kind of feeling good that I might get elected to Congress. Until the night before the election day. We didn't have a one day back then. It started pouring down. And I looked at the weather report to see when it was going to stop. It was going to rain all day Tuesday. Again, I said, Lord, why you want to do this to me? You know my people don't like to get out in the rain. And I had almost given up. I didn't even pray. I figured, well, I tried. Until I went out and I looked at the lines. and there were long lines outside of every voting place. And when we finally counted up, there was a 75% turnout of black registered voters in the pouring down rain, and it didn't stop raining until 9 o'clock on election night after the polls had closed. But we had a 75% turnout, and then I looked and I realized we were not an all-black district, and I said, well, are white folks voting like that too? And white folks were voting like that too. But much to my surprise, they voted for me. And it was the work that we did that not only helped us stay together and the next year elect Maynard Jackson mayor, and then a year after that, we sent Jimmy Carter to the White House, and we started a parade of power from Atlanta. In the middle of that power, though, was the passage of the mass transit system. And only one city in America, every city could have voted to tax themselves 10% to get 90% from the federal government. Nobody did it but Atlanta, but Fulton and DeKalb counties. And we did it with only 400 votes between the two counties. And so Marta pushed us another step forward. And then when we got to the Congress, a little fella came to me and he said, I understand you all are trying to get some money to build an airport. And I said, yeah, we are trying. I said, I'm on the banking committee. He said, well, you're going to wait a long time to get a lot of money from Washington. I said, well, where can I get it? He said, if you and Maynard are not afraid to come to Wall Street, we can show you how to get all the money you need. Now, Maynard went to Wall Street, and he came back with $700 million. I said, damn, they do have money there. But he was just the first of the mayors. I went 2 years later, and I got another big grant. And we have gotten all the money we needed to build that airport, and we don't have a penny of taxpayer money in it. And I don't know what they pay out there, but I know that everybody out there looks happy, and they're working hard, and that is now the busiest airport in the whole wide world. Atlanta has 100 million people passing through there this year. And Beijing in China is second. And they don't have but 80 million. Yeah, 80 million. But the other thing is that I looked around, and when I went to the office to see the general manager and tell him how well I thought they were doing and how proud I was of the airport, it was mostly women in there. And I remember Rita Samuels. And Rita Samuels had the head of the airport at her Women Flying High meeting. And he was bragging. He said, we got $800,000 of contracts to women. And everybody cheered. And Rita said, no, stop. I said, what's the matter, Rita? It should have been $1 billion. And we've been pushing and pushing and pushing. This last year, that airport earned $666 billion. Now, that's more than most countries in Africa. It's more than most countries in Latin America. It's about the size of the budget of, well, when you put Atlanta and the airport together, you have a budget the same size as Norway. And that's one of the reasons why it becomes easier to organize workers, easier to see that people get insurance and pay. And Well, that was 50-some years ago that you all elected me to Congress. And I don't believe we've lost a step since. We've continued to strive. We brought the Olympics here, and we didn't use any taxpayer money on that. We put $2.5 billion, and 41% of the money we raised for the Olympics was spent with minorities and women-owned companies. So to run a city like a business and to run it fair and square is really something that makes me proud. But I can't get too proud because I looked over there and I saw my brother, the sheriff. And I realized that we are putting people in jail when they don't have a driver's license and they don't have the $100 bond or the $50 bond to pay to get it out, and they're sitting up there in jail, and they haven't really done anything. Now, I don't know about you, but I think we have to give our women the right to choose what they want to do with their own bodies. Now, I just want to say now, just suppose one day they took a whole lot of women and put them in charge of everything, and they said, before any of you men can get a job, you got to get circumcised. Every man here would say, oh, shit. I ain't got much now. I ain't gonna cut that little bit off. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell, and this is, I mean, this is serious health. I have 9 grandchildren, and my oldest grandbaby had her first baby. She's 31, a second baby. The first one was healthy and did fine, and she's 5 years old, and they were ready for another one. And the baby was not alive, but she was in her stomach, and they would not remove that dead fetus. In my granddaughter, because everybody was afraid of what the legislature would say. We need to keep the legislature out of our bedrooms. And I think these issues, and let me go back to the jail issue, because I mean, everybody ought to take care of their own children. And if you have children out of wedlock, they're still your children. But all of those children don't need to be running around here, you know, loose and irresponsible. And then when they catch a man with a job, they put him in jail because he's 6 months behind in child support, and he should find a way to pay. But we should also find a way to let him out and let him work. And that's why we got a crowded jail, because we got a whole lot of people in there that really haven't done anything violent against any other human being. And we've got to fine-tune this society to the point that we can live together like one happy family. And you all are doing it here. You make me proud. I'm proud of all of my time in labor, and actually I was in the civil rights movement for 30 years off and on, and I never went to jail once, well, but once, and that wasn't organized. That was in Savannah trying to get Hosea Williams out of jail, and they locked me up. But I was out here with the sanitation workers, just like I was in Memphis with the sanitation workers. And all of the preachers were there, black and white preachers, lined up along. We were trying to keep the garbage trucks from coming out. And my friend Joe Lowry, my brother, said, Andy, I'm the chairman of SCLC now. Let me get in the middle. And I said, okay, come on, Joe, get in the middle. And then I looked up and these trucks were coming, and he was where the truck could ride over him, and he put me right where the wheel was. And I said, oh, Lord, have mercy. And I finally said to the lieutenant that was there to arrest us, I said, excuse me, officer. I know it's your job to arrest us, but I want you to remember that these men are striking because they want to buy shoes for their children. They want their wife to have a pretty dress now and then. They want to live a decent life. And you know, if they get a raise and if they get an increase in salary, you're going to get one too. So don't be roughing us up, beating us up. We are on strike for you. And it didn't take me long after that, once I got to be the mayor, one of the first things we did was get all the police officers together and we organized a police union. And we tried our best to get everybody represented. And I think that's part of the success of this great area. It was about not quite 1 million people when I started running for Congress. Now it's over 7 million, pushing 8. And so the growth and development is, it ain't shabby. It's growing up here, and I don't know where y'all get the money or who got it, but they tell me that people were paying $900 to see Beyonce, and $1,000, $1,200 a ticket to see, what's the other lady's name? Taylor Swift. And even Lionel Richie was pulling $500, $600 tickets. And so when you look around, somebody is doing damn well. And I don't know who's responsible for it. I know the politicians have done the best that they can, but I don't think we could have done it. I don't think we would be in where we are if it wasn't for organized labor standing with us. Thank you, and God bless you.
Black Male Initiative Georgia co-chair John R. Taylor III. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, moved to Atlanta in '01. John has worked with the SEIU since '03. Over his 16-plus years with SEIU, he has continued to work on various campaigns and initiatives, including developing a model for integrating student and youth affiliates directly into labor organizing. Most recently, he has worked as the National Field Director of SEIU's Property Services Division, under the mentorship of Reverend James Orange and Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry. John has served as a co-chairperson of the Martin Luther King Jr. March Committee since '01. A poet, a dedicated husband, a devoted father, and a committed advocate for creating equity, sustainability, and empowerment in communities of color, and has a deep passion for Black people and their lives and families. Please give it up for John.
All right, y'all, we've had a rousing morning. I've been coming to the MLK breakfast for over 20 years, and I can tell you, I have never heard so much glory on a stage. It's amazing. But I'm big on call and response, so I'm going to keep this brief, and we're going to do this right. So they asked me to give an occasion, why we're here. So first of all, I've never seen an occasion come so far into the program, but I like it because it changed everything I was going to say. So now I have to give you an occasion. Not about why people think they're here or why they come to stand and sit at the foot of labor or pay homage to the work that we do in this house, but why we're here. So y'all repeat after me. Some of us remember. Y'all didn't play with me. I said we do call and response. Some of us remember.
Some of us remember.
Everyone should know.
Everyone should know.
And no one should ever forget.
And no one should ever forget.
You see, some of us remember that it was folks like Charlie Fleming and Reverend James Orange, Charlie Key, right? Richard Ray that put us in this space. Some of us remember that labor was not always friendly, but it stood up in a moment when we didn't have access. Some of us remember that there was a day when we couldn't vote. So the storms were raging and people were dying and the situation was perilous. See, some of us remember they used to sing songs like, "This may be my last time." But they had a roll of quarters in their pocket and they went out in the dark because we didn't have cell phones and they were accepting. Some of us remember they signed contracts saying that this might cost me my life. This is the letter that I write to my family. I'm going to get on a phone and tell them that I love them, and then I am going to bravely move into the dark world. Some of us remember that not everybody made it. And those of us that remember, we understand what sacrifice is. Whether we witnessed it, we heard the story, or we cried about it later. Some of us remember the challenges that existed and that this country has not always been fair, even, or equal. And we want everyone to know that labor and civil rights is inextricably tied. Everyone needs to know what Doug Shipman said was true. It was labor that helped fund the foundation of the civil rights movement. It was labor that created inroads and sacrifices that allowed our civil rights leaders to rise. It was labor that opened pathways to political power so that we had the capacity to elect, in some cases still, for the very first time, someone who looked like us. But we're clear about the fact that no one should ever forget that every piece of progress that has been made can be swept away. That every moment and step forward can push us back. That we can watch the erosion of a Voting Rights Act, of Roe v. Wade. Ambassador Young talked about the millions of dollars that Maynard brought back, the hundreds of millions of dollars. When I started working at the airport organizing folks, they were making less than $10 an hour. That ain't no airport I wanted to work at. It might be the busiest airport in the world, but the ergonomic surveys that we did for SEIU members said that they were suffering en masse. Ask a food service worker, a janitorial worker, ask somebody that's pushing a wheelchair, ask one of those gate attendants, ask somebody that is out there on that tarmac fueling that plane, ask somebody that is making sure that it takes off and lands the way it's supposed to, whether it is the job they want it to be. So we should never forget that while so many things have been accomplished, so many more are yet to do. We should never forget that when we say all our skin folks ain't our kin folks, see, we mean that in a real way. It ain't good enough to get in the seat. It ain't good enough to get my vote. It ain't good enough to say you got the job and the title if you can't do the work. And you don't get to work for some of us. You have to work for all of us. See, some of us remember that it was great to have political will, but without freedom, there was no real power, and without economics, there was no real change. Some of us know that everyone deserves to have access and a right to sustainability. It is clear that we don't get here by ourselves, and none of us should ever forget folks like Melanie Campbell, Rita Sanders, Reverend Orange, C.T. Vivian, Reverend Richard Bright, Ralph Worrell, Leona Perry, Earl T. Shinholster, and Ruby Shinholster. Let us never forget all of the countless and nameless foot soldiers of this movement who made sure that labor was inextricably tied to our work so that we could continue to build the futures that we want and have the pleasures that we deem and love so greatly today. So with that, I'm going to say, part of building a structure for change is creating political will and political grace. And I have the pleasure of calling up to speak to you a young sister who is not the future. She is the now of our political freedom and movement. The regional director of the Working Families Party, Brittany Wade. And as she comes up, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and just say, Mama Helen, Mama Mel, Mama Deborah, Auntie, you, look, that was, where you at? I see, hey man, I just want to make sure, see sometimes when your wife real pretty, you want to make sure you don't get in no trouble, so I be making sure that people don't be coming for me, like her husband, Lorenzo Scott, who has been a champion in the labor movement for over 35 years. Give him a round of applause. So sometimes it's just little mama, but we just be playing. I have the pleasure of bringing Brittany Whaley to the stage and saying that she is not only a champion for women, not only a champion for brothers, not only a champion for poor people, not only a champion for growth, but she is a champion for young folks. She sees the importance of political power, and she understands what it takes to seize it. So y'all join me in welcoming Brittany Whaley to the stage. All right.
Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, John. That's my brother, a leader of leaders. I really do love you. And thank you, Sandra, for having us here and for your leadership. It's always a joy to be in the space where we can come in and reflect, celebrate our greats, and also do some calls to action. Because where would we be if we're not building on what has happened and the people who have come before us? So as John said, my name is Brittany Whaley. I'm the Southeast Regional Director for the Working Families Party. As I was reflecting and coming into this space, I thought about my father, who, God willing, will turn 90 in July. And he spent 50 plus years, union man, as a cement mason, working hard for our families. He was born in 1934 in Tallulah, Louisiana. So a man from the South, right? When I think about MLK, who was born just 5 years before that, I think about the ways in which I relate to my father, the beautiful intergenerational connection that we have, the mutual love and respect. And I think about that and hold that as I'm in this space, and I'm grounded because we had Ambassador Young, but so many of our elders who I take what you have, I take the wisdom and the insight, and it propels me to do what I need to do. I also think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's why we're here, right? To celebrate his life. He was assassinated when he was 39 years old. So we did a shout out earlier, and it was like, who hears, Social Security, and the CEO brought it home for us. I want to recognize the folks who are under 40 in this space. Some of the most prolific words that we have, that we hold on to, that we wrestle with in our movement, in government, across our communities, was said and uttered by a man who was assassinated when he was 39. And so I hold that, and I'm grounded, and I'm honored in some ways, and in other ways, the folks who are under 40, I want to just call you out because you have the lived experience, because you have, from our ancestors and from what we are doing in this work, everything that we need to do the hard things, to say the hard things, to move in a way with conviction and principle that may not always be the same tactics and the same truths as people across different identities, but to do it in a way that brings us together in a community and moves us forward as a collective. And so that is how I'm grounded in this space. Now, what is Working Families Party? Working Families Party is a grassroots political organization, and we fight to get people elected who will represent us in government, who will fight for structural change, and who come out of our communities. And so when we think about building independent political power and building the multiracial working class, we are a home for the multiracial working class. When we're thinking about building this for our communities and thinking about the leadership in its wholeness, I go back to the words of MLK, and where do we go from here, community or chaos? He says our goal is to, and this is from the book, I need y'all to go get the book. I wanted to make sure that it's quoted verbatim. He says, the goal is to create leaders who embody virtues we can respect, who have moral and ethical principles we can applaud with an enthusiasm that enables us to rally support for them based on confidence and trust, and who demand high standards and give consistent, loyal support to those who merit it. To those who merit it, right? At the Working Families Party, we do the work of electing these champions. We started this coalition as labor and community organizations, and we continue to stand alongside our labor brothers and sisters to fight for equal rights, to fight for fair pay, to fight for health care, to fight for dignity in the workplace. Our partnership with labor unions are grounded in a shared commitment to social and economic justice. And moreover, in this moment we're in, this political moment that we're in, we must also fight fascism. We must fight the alignment around these conservative values, be it through culture wars or otherwise. And we must understand that, and we must fight authoritarianism, but more importantly, we must understand that building a multiracial alignment is paramount. And where does it start if not with workers? With that understanding, and with the understanding that our labor is valuable and our people are inherently valuable, we move forward. So I'm convicted today to stand in solidarity with workers, to fight against human injustices, to stand for peace, to stand for ceasefire, to stand for people who are calling for a commitment to democracy, those across the country and those right here in our city, to stand because all of our issues are connected, and if there was ever a time where we need a multiracial, intergenerational movement and working class alignment that puts people first and our collective struggles to fight for democracy, for ourselves and for our babies, that time is now. And so at WFP, that commitment is unwavering, even when it's hard. And so in closing, what I'll say is, when I think about MLK and I think about the great leaders who have come before us, it's not thinking so much about what would MLK do. How many people have heard, what would Jesus do, right? It's not so much what would MLK do, but it is what has he made room for us to do through his contributions and his labor. So I feel encouraged and I am hopeful that the things we are cooking up in this space, in our locals, in our organizations, in our communities, that they are audacious and dreamy and even more bold, that it is taking the next step forward, that our work is intergenerational, that it is rich and high on ideas and impact and low on ego, that it centers the least among us, and that it stands against exploitation of workers, of poor people, and all those who hold marginalized identities and are squeezed because we live in a capitalistic society. So I want to do the hard thing and say the hard thing and ask, what has MLK made room for us to do? What has A. Philip Randolph made room for us to do? Bayard Rustin, Ella Baker, name all of the ancestors who we revere. What have they made space for us to do to be bold and to be activated and to be convicted and principled and assertive in our leadership? At WFP, again, we deeply appreciate Sandra and all of the work that our labor brothers and sisters are doing in community and through our labor locals. And we say that we stand 10 toes down, right, in support of and alongside our comrades And WFP will continue to fight and to elect champions who will get in office and change the material conditions of people on the ground. And so that is our commitment to you, and I appreciate y'all having us here today.
Our next guest is a true Georgian peach. Born in Savannah and raised in the Bronx, she attended Southwest High School in Atlanta. Rose has also had a passion for helping others while giving back to her community. She volunteered with the MLK March Committee and later joined SCLC Women's Incorporated, where under the leadership of the late Mrs. Evelyn G. Lowry, Rose directed and Bridging the Gap Youth Program. Rose has worked for numerous organizations in Atlanta. She's a current member of the NAACP of DeKalb County, the founder and the creator of Touch Rose LLC, touching lives since 2004 through poetry, music, and art. In 2022, in honor of her sister, she started Touch a Rose care bags for the homeless. The bags are distributed 3 times a year. To date, there have been more than 350 bags distributed. Her focus is on bringing poetry back into the classroom. Please give it up for Rose Mincy.
Good morning still, correct? Good morning. I'm so honored to be here as we honor a fantastic leader. The poem I want to share with you is from my book, Let Me Touch You. And I wrote this years ago when I was on a heritage tour with SCLC Women. My heart was really touched. This is dedicated to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, and it's actually Coretta speaking to Martin. I call this Warriors for Peace. Close your eyes and listen to my voice. I am ready to fight. It is my choice. I'll walk beside you, holding your hand, for I am your woman and you are my man. You can lean on me when times get tough. We'll travel the smooth roads and the rough. Our struggles may surely cause us pain. Still we march together in sunshine and rain. I will give you joy in 4 small faces and take you to paradise in secret places. I am strong because I have my faith and you. We will be together forever because our love is true. I was never ready to let you go, though after you were gone, I continued to grow. The lives that have touched you, Martin, are now touching me. I am here to see what you wanted us to be. Our journey continues day after day, and even when our fight is over, for peace of the world, we will continue to pray. Thank you. You know, I forgot I can't get from the back of the room to the front like I used to be able to. It's a couple years in there. I want to recognize the Black Women's Roundtable, particularly Melanie Campbell came in with us today. Thank you all. And I think several times we've heard mention of Ms. Wanda Jones and the work that she is doing with her foundation. Wanda, would you say again, just stand up and let everybody know who you are. Please make sure you talk to her before you leave. She is doing amazing work in the community, mentoring young men in particular, but you did hear Michael Thurman talk a little bit about the work that she's doing. So next up, I'm going to invite a very close friend of mine. She doesn't need a big introduction because wherever you see her and her folks, you see orange, one of my favorite colors. So Deborah Scott is going to join me for a few words, and we will move with our program.
Y'all look good from up here. So when our rights are under attack, what will you do? I don't know. I don't believe you. I said, when our rights are under attack, what will you do? Stand up and fight back, right? So this is the coalition coalition of the willing. This is the same room that's going to knock on doors and make sure those elected officials that work for us do the right thing. This is the same coalition that's going to make sure we get registered people to vote, get them educated, and voter suppression goes away. This is the same coalition. So we are the coalition of the willing. So if we're standing up for labor, we're also standing up for the community. We cannot have labor without the community. We are a labor community partnership. Reverend Martin Luther King stood with the community. He was the community spokesperson. It didn't start with the elected officials. It didn't start with the ministers. It started with the people. The people have the power. There's organized people and there's organized money, and that's what labor represents. Organized people. Are you organizers? Yeah. We're the organizers. Yeah. We're the strategists. We're the folks that put this stuff together because we got work to do this year. So we've heard from the elected officials, we've heard from the dignitaries, we've heard from our ancestors, and we call their names. We call Reverend James Orange's name right now, and Cleo Orange and Jemida Orange and all those ancestors that helped us to get here. But now it's time for us to work. Say work. It's time for us to work. We can go to all the beautiful dinners this week, and I hope that you do. You can get all the awards this week, and I hope that you do. But we also hope to see you out there marching on Monday, because we still don't have our rights. Reverend Andrew Young talked about a woman's body today here in the House of Labor, right? So this is about workers' rights. This is about women's rights. This is about reproductive rights. But this is about the rights of the people to choose who they sit in power, who they put in power, because they work for us. So if you're not down to register people to vote, we need you to go. If you're not down to getting people educated to vote, we need you to go because you're in the way. Because this is a working organization. This is a working coalition. This is the willing coalition of workers. So we stand with and for workers. But we can't forget Mrs. Johnson and Miss Jackson that may not be able to get a union job. She may not be able to get there on MARTA because it takes 120 minutes to get to work. Right? So we can't forget about these issues the 364 days of the year. We have to keep remembering that we have to work and organize and work and organize and work together. So when our rights are under attack, what will we do? That's what we'll do.
All right, I just want to make an announcement. You guys heard the lovely poet, Rose Mincy. Rose actually has her books back there in the back. Please see her before you leave. Also, I'm looking at Eric Castater. Eric is going to be running for office, and we encourage all union members to run for office. That's a public service announcement.
Our next guest is Ms. Helen Butler, a member of the NAACP, Vice President of Metro Atlanta Personnel Society, Society for Human Resources Management, and Industrial Relations Research Association. As one of the first 50 African American students to attend the University of Georgia after the integration, she served on the Fulton County Complete Count Committee and the Georgia Complete Count Committee for the 2010 census that targeted the African, African American, Afro-Latino, and Caribbean communities. She serves as the governor of the Black Women's Roundtable of Georgia as an affiliate of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation to promote health and wellness, economic security, education, and global empowerment of Black women. She serves on the board of directors for Pro Georgia, the State Voices Civic Engagement Table. Please give it up for Helen Butler.
Good morning, labor. I know we all tired, right? But I'm bringing you greetings from the People's Agenda. That's the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda and the Black Women's Roundtable. Of course, the People's Agenda was founded by the late Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry.
And of course, he and Dr. King, Andrew Young, Hosea Williams, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, all of them did a lot for us for civil and human rights. But I know we've all quoted Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, and that's the most memorable message that he delivered. But the one that I like the best is, give us the ballot and we can be the change that we want to be or have done in our communities. So I'm not a speaker, but I'm going to be very brief, but I want to give you actions to do. They gave us the ballot. The 1965 Voting Rights Act gave us the right to choose who should represent us and that we could have policies that will improve our community. So the charge for you is to use that ballot. Use it on March the 12th for the presidential preference primary. Use that ballot for the general primary on May 21st. And use that ballot on November the 3rd when we elect our president and all of our state officials and local officials. So today, your charge is what? I didn't hear you. What is your charge? What is your charge? Use that ballot. Hey, leader.
Again, my introductions are brief. You learn more from the speaker than you'll ever know from what I tell you about him. But we have a poet laureate here, Hank Stewart. Hank Stewart is also a person that cares for the community, has projects in the community for youth empowerment. And that's the longest introduction I'm ever going to do tonight. Hank Stewart.
Well, I will not be long. It has been said. But one of the things that I absolutely love about labor is mad. M-A-D. They're always mad. You ever been around any labor members? They're always mad. I love mad people. I love hanging out with mad people. Sandra's always mad. John's mad. If you're around anybody in labor, they're always M-A-D, mad. Right? Just mad. Dr. King was mad. Ms. Clayton, Reverend James Orange, Jemida Orange, Melon, they were always mad. I just love hanging out with mad people. M-A-D. It's an acronym, making a difference. Motivated and determined. As a matter of fact, they were double mad, motivated and determined to make a difference. So thank you, labor, for always being mad. When I think about labor, I also think about one of my favorite scriptures, Melanie, and it's Jeremiah 6:3. And Jeremiah 6:3 was real strong because Jeremiah had some haters and he was rebuilding the wall. He had some haters and they were calling him down. And Jeremiah said something that was real powerful. I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Woo! I am doing a great work and I can't come down. And labor, you are doing a great work, so don't come down. So I want to just share a piece of poetry. John Taylor knows I live by this phrase. It's something that I wake up with and go to sleep with because too many people invested in me. Reverend James Orange, Dr. Joseph Ecclesar, Cameron Madison, Rita Sammons, too many people, Tommy Dortch, it's too many people really invested in me, so I live by this phrase, and it's real simple, and it says, it's our time, it's our turn, but if we don't do our part, it's our fault. I'm gonna say that again. It's our time, it's our turn, but if we don't do our part, it is our fault. I'll say it one more time for the Holy Spirit. It's our time, and it's our turn. Well, if we don't do our part, it's our fault. So this poem is simply entitled, I Accept. What are you giving me? What are you putting in my hand? What you've given me has just altered, it has changed my plans. Why are you looking at me like that? There's this look in your eyes. Am I even qualified to accept this? Will there be a ceremony? Do I need cap and gown? Need I be baptized? I know you're tired. I know you deserve rest. How can I say no with all that you've poured into me, all that you've invested? I'll take it. Okay, I'll take the baton, I'll carry the torch. You've earned the right to relax, the right to sit on the porch. I accept the baton and all the responsibilities that it holds. I accept the challenge to stand tall and bold, to fight for justice, to stay on the wall. I'll do what needs to be done. Yes, I accept the call. And integrity would stand with me, even if to stand alone to speak truth no matter who's wrong. You fought the good fight. You completed your assignment. Pass me the baton. Our souls are in alignment. I'll sacrifice my body just like you. I'll stand or kneel against racism, sexism, discrimination, regardless of the hue. I'll get up early and I'll stay up late, and when it's my time to be tested, just like you, I won't take the bait. I accept the baton because it's my turn. I accept all of our ancestors who were raped, beaten, those who were burned. I accept because before midnight, December the 31st, 1862, our ancestors, they were praying to God on their knees. I accept all of our ancestors who were hung from those trees. I accept because dogs and water holes didn't turn you around. I accept because our ancestors spoke up and spoke out, even when they didn't know the language. They didn't know a person, place, or a thing was a noun. I accept because at the bottom of that bridge you were beaten and left for dead, broken bones, tear gas, blood dripping down your head. I accept because you sat when you had tired feet. I accept because the only way we could walk into that hotel was through the back door, Sandra, and it was only to wash dishes, cook on the bed, change the sheets. I accept because America was built on the land that our ancestors toiled. I stand because our ancestors' blood fertilized these soils. So if it rains, I stand. If it's hot, no fan, I stand with the weight on my shoulders. But the foundation that I stand on makes me bolder. I stand for those who didn't get a chance. I stand for those who died because a white woman said at me he took a glance. I even stand for those who look like me but may have forgotten. Although our ancestors were side by side in the fields picking cotton. I stand for seniors, I stand for children. I fight for one, I advocate for millions. I stand for those ancestors whose dreams of freedom they would hold fast. I stand for so many of our ancestors who died for this country and the flag was never flown for them at half staff or half mast. I stand for those living on the bridges and sleeping on makeshift pallets. I stand because our ancestors knew our voice was in the census, it was in our vote, it was in the booth, it was on the ballot. So yea, though I walk through the valleys and the shadows of death, it's about others now, no longer about self. Give me a baton I carry with pride. I won't let the torch burn out, the baton hit the ground, even when I'm tired. You trained me. Now I'm one of your lieutenants. I take the baton from my ancestors so one day I can pass it to our descendants. I accept. Do you? The poem is entitled, I Accept. Thank you very much.
We are about to be blown out of here by a young lady, Precious Graham, who has got an operatic voice.
Okay, we're done.
Are you ready? Come on, come on, come on. Get ready for this.
Our Father,
temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever.
During the past year, we've lost a number of our union leaders, family, and friends, too numerous to mention. So if you would, can we all rise in a moment of silence for all those that have passed along the way in the past year? And we won't name names because I know we're gonna miss somebody. I did want at one time that everybody call out that loved person's name or what have you. You can if you want to, but this is a moment of silence, so let us begin. Amen. All right, folks. I'm going to bring back Margot Bingham, and we'll be taking care of the rest of the program.
I just wanted to close out today thanking everyone for being here. Thank you for allowing me to be here and joining you on such a special weekend. Sandra, thank you so much for letting me be one of your students. Students. I needed to find the word. But if I can ask your help to join me, please. I think I would be remiss if we don't close out today with Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'm sorry? And thank you to our sound and DJ and everybody that made all of this possible, that you can hear me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you. Be safe.